Thanks for everyone who made the time to come out, and thanks to the audience online. I just found out this is being webcast as well. I would encourage people online to perhaps observe the same decorum as people in presence. I've had the unfortunate distinction of giving an online town hall where at least one person was not aware I could see him, and it was a very large, very naked man. So, and this old expression, if you're feeling nervous, imagine your audience naked. Do not do it. With no disrespect to the beautiful people in this room, I've seen some of my audience naked. It is not attractive. But what is attractive? Fireweed. We are two critical minerals projects in Yukon. We've just closed a $17 million financing. Actually, that number's wrong. Sorry, we have $32 million on hand. But I wanted to start with this, not because of the vagaries of share count or anything like that, but I want you to look at the support we have. 20% owned by the Lundin family, which started with a $20 million investment late last year. Tech, nearly 10%, 8.3% ownership as a result of, I think, 5 different investments in the company over the last 4 years. Larry Childress, a large high net worth out of the U.S., Uncle Larry, as we like to call him, who's been a steadfast supporter of the company. Ibera Capital, which is a group of ex-Fortescue and ex-BHP people in Australia as well, a big supporters, and some very close friends and family who own very large blocks. So a pretty small float overall. And really what's driven their passion for the company and their support in us is our 3 projects, really the 2 flagships, which I'm going to talk about today, McMillan Pass and Macdonald. So both in Eastern Yukon Territory, right on the border with NWT. We benefit, Yukon, one of the benefits of the vast, expanses of wilderness is untapped exploration potential. One of the challenges is a lack of infrastructure. We benefit from a road to Mac Pass and Macdonald, and much like Paul was just mentioning, we are also beneficiaries of Resource Gateway funds, with $71 million going to improving the access roads and hopefully being deployed soon. I know we've seen some RFPs out for that, so hopefully road work start soon. It was McMillan Pass that was the first asset we bought. The core of it we'd acquired off Hud Bay, so the Tom and Jason deposits, long orphaned within the Hud Bay portfolio. By the time we did a site visit with them, there was nobody in Hud Bay left who had been to the project. We recognized that they were perhaps underexplored a little bit, and pretty quickly recognized as well that there was a district thesis here. So we did a series of land deals with Newmont, Teck, and a series of other juniors to grow the package from 50 square kilometers to 940 square kilometers. And, not to kind of belabor every drill intersection here, but you'll notice that every one of these drill intersections is a pretty great intersection, and all of these sit outside that 2018 resource. So when we think about updating this next, which will be hopefully Q1 next year, we're expecting a massive change in the resource. And in context, what does a massive change to an already massive resource mean? This was the 2018 resource sort of in context. You can see resource size versus, zinc plus lead grade there, 4.5, 4.6 million tons, zinc plus lead. That's big. That's very big, right? You start to measure yourself against some of the biggest zinc mines in the world. We feel pretty comfortable signaling that there'll be a triple-digit percentage increase in that with our next resource update. So that puts you in the ballpark of the rewards, the Ozernoyas, the Taylor Hermosas. And for people familiar with the Taylor Hermosa story, Arizona Mining, South 32 paid $2 billion for that all cash in 2018. So when we think that our next resource will be in that ballpark, and I think because of the potential in this project, we'll eventually leave it in the rearview mirror, you can see why we think our $200 million valuation now is peanuts next to the potential. And really, it was the potential that's emerging now, driven by this broad district thesis, has really been, the focus of that lately has been in the area we call boundary zone. And this was actually part of the ground that we purchased off Teck. So they own 12 million shares now. They sold this to us for 1.5 million shares. I think may have pretty quickly got seller's remorse as we made a significant discovery there. But it's a testament to what's the net present value of a project that you're not doing any work on, that's sitting idle in your portfolio, and the answer is 0, right? So they got shares in a company that did something with it that now is making real progress with it. And as Cominco back in the day, they had some what I would call technical successes in this area. They had drilled these long intersections, sort of 1 to 300 meters of sort of 1.5 to 2.5% zinc. I think in that era you would not call that ore grade, right? And at the same time they were drilling off a little deposit you may have heard of called Red Dog. So they, to say the least, they didn't, keep this, consider this particularly exciting. We came in 2019, our first couple holes there, 230 meters of 4.5% zinc, but critically, the first 100 meters of that from surface, almost 9%. So now you're getting several multiples of the average open pit zinc grade in the, of the mines around the world, and you're looking at, sort of a broad potential for a sizable pit and mineral endowment there. And we recognized that the mineralization there looked a lot different than Tom and Jason. It was these veins, these veinlets, flooding these volcanics, sometimes these big multi-meter sphalerite veins, and it was a very different model than what we were used to exploring for here. And part of the work we had done to completely upend the dogma on these deposits. And we recognized that what it looked a lot like was what they call vein ore at Red Dog, which sits below the main part of Red Dog. So the main part of Red Dog is where these fluids replace the barite horizon. You produce these massive zinc lead sulfides. So we had this idea of like, okay, well, if we have the uninteresting part of Red Dog, maybe we have the interesting part of Red Dog too, or an analog for it, right? So we ran this theory past tech and asked them, had anyone ever looked at the boundary zone core and compared it to the vein ore at Red Dog? And they sheepishly said no. So we're like, are we crazy, or does this look similar? And they said, yeah, no, we agree, it does. So if you're looking for something that's a massive sulfide and barite hosted, it's going to be heavy. So we did a gravity survey around that area, found a significant extension. This was all in 2020, by the way, when we had a truncated season dealing with extreme COVID challenges. We managed to turn around a gravity survey, a field level map, a target, a drill hole, and a discovery. And that was what we called Boundary West. And what we found there was exactly what we theorized might be there. So particularly the massive sulfide zone you see there in red, that is what was a 30-meter thick barite horizon at one point, completely replaced by sulfides. So in some areas dominated by pyrite and less interesting, but critically in other areas dominated by sphalerite and galena and very interesting. And as a total bonus, in our second year of drilling that target, we hit a parallel horizon, which you can see in purple there. The first intersection to that, 10 meters of 24% zinc. And interestingly, when you model that all in 3D, that 1983 hole from Kaminko, which they went through a fault and decided to shut the hole down, was about 4 meters short of that second horizon. So sometimes it's better to be lucky than good. So we were a bit lucky that Kaminko decided to shut that hole down and left the discovery for us. And after last year's drilling, with particularly that one incredible hole, which was the best ever hole in the project, 124 meters with 12.3% zinc, we recognized that Boundary West was getting higher grade as it went east. Boundary Main was getting higher grade as it went west. So we thought maybe there's something in the middle there. And that led to our drilling this year. And this is kind of that stratiform zone flattened out there. Some incredible holes. And I would highlight, 2307 there. 2 intersections in the same hole, 82 meters of 12% zinc, 2% lead, and 80 grams silver. And a second intersection of 118 meters of 15% zinc, 2.8% lead, and 86 grams silver. So an insane hole, right? So this is the best hole ever on the project by almost a factor of 2. So this is highlighting that in the 50 years of exploration in this project, I think now 9 or 8 out of 10 of the top 10 holes all time have been in the last 2 years. So our geology, our vectoring is just getting so much better. And yet there's so much more to do here. I think it was on Trevor Hall's show, I think I made a joke about we'd be exploring here for 100 years. And I didn't mean that we were never going to build a mine, we were just going to casually explore here for 100 years. But what I meant is there's so much potential here. Someone's going to build a mine, they're going to launch it with a 20-year reserve, and it's going to maintain a 20-year reserve for 80 years. It's a very forward-looking statement. Wildly unsupported by the current resource, but there's so much potential here. Boundary zone, Tom, Jason, end zone, they all outcrop or subcrop. The discovery was somewhat easy. There's going to be buried target here. The targets you see named there can be anything from a structural, conceptual target to a geophysical anomaly, a geochemical anomaly, to sometimes an outcrop or even a historic intersection. We see massive sulfide, like incredibly high-grade boulders in the float and glacial erratics that we know from ice direction do not come from any of the known deposits. So with 100% certainty, there is more here. Truly an amazing project that keeps giving. It seems every time we flip a coin and is the project going to get better, it seems 9 out of 10 times it comes up in our favor. And not to rest on our laurels, and I used to joke that being the CEO of a zinc company was a bit like being the boy named Sue. Like, you just get tough because you come to a conference like this and nobody takes your meetings, right? It's like, sorry, we're only investing in gold. Sorry, we only invest in silver. Sorry, I never want to talk to another zinc company again, right? So picking up an even more obscure metal in tungsten, maybe not the right thing to do, but it was right next door. And one of the things we recognized, this was held by the government following the bankruptcy of the past owner. And it was a mature project. It had a feasibility study. It had been through the environmental assessment. It had a positive recommendation to proceed. The government very much wanted us to own it, so we agreed to purchase it. And if you don't know tungsten, this is like strategic, critical, and then strategic, right? So 85% of it mined in China, another 5% in Russia. The U.S. recently mandating that defense contractors cannot source tungsten from China or Russia after 2026. So where are they getting it from? There's no mines in North America. It's one that I meet senior members of government and they know the project before I even explain who I am, right? And the reason is because this is so exactly like that zinc chart, size versus grade. And you can see a pretty predictable distribution that as you get larger, you get to these kind of low-grade pigs. Mactung is a freakish outlier. There's nothing, outside of China, there's nothing like Mactung globally. It's this super weird combination of size and grade in the tungsten world. So we see an opportunity to, be, the West's answer to tungsten needs, right? So this is, could easily at that sort of grade and size produce everything North America needs for 40 or 50 years. It's a project that's so big that you normally, I forget what the engineering rule where you try to size a mine for maximum, minimum capex but maximum MPV. You have to completely throw that out the window with this, because if you sized it that size, you would take over 20% of the tungsten market on your first year, which is not feasible, right? So it's an amazing project, and we're delighted to have it. And we recognize that there are development synergies with MacPass, that there's current exploration synergies, that there's lobbying synergies. I can tell you as a junior mining CEO, I never thought I was going to spend this much time lobbying, but here we are. Canadian government, U.S. government, it's a huge part of our efforts these days. And so there's the resource we published in June. But so that I'll wrap things up. It's not a great time in the markets right now. I think Fireweed's bucked the trend. We've had a pretty good year. So much of that because we have really, really strong backers. There's no financing risk with Fireweed. When we want to raise money, we raise money, and we do it on our terms. The last financing we did was at market with no warrants, and it was done. We have an extremely catalyst-rich year coming. We've released 7 of our drill holes from this year. There's another 55 or so coming over the rest of the year. We'll have a resource update on MacPass Q1 next year. I think, again, I'll invoke my conversations with Trevor, who always gets the best quotes out of me. But I said that resource update likely to be a religious experience for a lot of our shareholders. It's huge years for us, and I'm extremely flattered with the confidence that's been put in us by our backers and the market. And I'm here for the next day and happy to answer any questions. And please ask Sandy questions as well, and have a great show. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Brandon. You got time for a question?
Oh, okay, go ahead. Hit me.
Okay, Brandon. With the potential at MacPass, you illustrated a bit of a Hollywood problem in terms of all the targets. How do you know some of the blind targets aren't the absolute best, maybe the center of gravity of the whole system, and you should be focused on?
Well, look, I think when you ultimately have a mine plan that has extremely robust economics, you have to think about the present value of money. If you explore for another 10 years, maybe you get a more optimal mine plan. But you've pushed out your cash flow 10 years, right? So I think we've started comprehensive baseline. We're working towards environmental assessment starting in a couple of years, which means we're going to have to put a pin in it. But that has to be done at some point. It's a good problem to have.
Thanks very much, Brandon.
Thank you, everyone.